There are moments in life when the days appear indistinguishable, when one sunrise fades into another with no sense of direction or promise. It feels as though existence is a grey corridor stretching endlessly, a hall without doors, a season without fruit. Many souls, wandering through such hours, begin to believe that lack is their natural inheritance. That emptiness is the script written for them by forces beyond their control. Yet there is always a day, hidden somewhere in the calendar, in which the old order gives way, when scarcity loses its power and abundance begins to flow like a river cutting through barren land. That day comes unannounced to some, but to others it is declared beforehand, as if heaven wishes them to be awake, prepared, and expectant when the curtain rises. September 27th stands as such a day not of chance or coincidence, but of divine intention, where the shadows of lack are commanded to retreat, and the dawn of provision is called to appear. It is not that life itself changes in the blink of an eye, as though gold is scattered at your feet or treasures drop from the sky. No, the deeper truth is more mysterious and more powerful. The shift begins first within, in that hidden chamber of the soul where belief and imagination reside. To step out of lack is not merely to have more things, but to awaken to the knowledge that you were never truly forsaken, that what you need has always been prepared for you, in ways unseen. Scarcity thrives where hearts have been taught to see themselves as abandoned, where minds are persuaded that life is a cruel teacher. But when the eyes are opened, when the veil is lifted, when the soul perceives that it is chosen, then everything else follows. Abundance is not a matter of possessions, but a matter of recognition. Recognition that you are not forgotten. Recognition that the world is not as empty as despair has whispered to you. Consider the image of a seed lying buried in the soil. For months it may appear lifeless, pressed beneath the dark weight of earth. To the casual observer, it seems swallowed up, destined to rot. Yet within that husk lies an invisible energy, waiting for the appointed time to break open and push forth into the light. The moment of transformation is sudden, yet it has been prepared for long before. The roots and shoots come not because of chance, but because the soil and season conspired with the seed's hidden design. So too does September 27th stand as the appointed hour when the seed within you breaks open, when what appeared to be lack is revealed as preparation, when what seemed barren is shown to be a waiting womb. The life of lack has a peculiar way of training the soul, though we seldom see its purpose while we are in it. In deprivation, one learns hunger, and hunger sharpens desire. In absence, one learns patience, and patience strengthens the soul against despair. In long seasons of want, we are tempted to believe ourselves neglected, and yet, often unknowingly, we are being prepared for the weight of abundance. For abundance is not easily carried. It is a responsibility as much as it is a gift. A heart that has never known lack is prone to pride, to wastefulness, to blindness toward the needs of others. But a heart that has walked the desert learns gratitude for every drop of water, learns reverence for the small and the simple, learns to hold treasures not with clenched fists, but with open hands. So when the day of abundance arrives, such a heart does not merely consume, it stewards, it shares, it rejoices in generosity. To be chosen is never to be spared the wilderness. On the contrary, to be chosen is often to be led through the wilderness first, so that when the land of promise is reached, one does not mistake it for a casual reward, but understands it as the fulfillment of a promise. The wilderness strips away illusions. It burns away the false security of appearances. It reveals the limits of human effort until at last the soul, weary and humbled, can receive abundance not as an achievement, but as a gift. September 27th is not only a date on the calendar, but the marker of such a turning, a signpost along the journey declaring that the wilderness has served its purpose and the season of fruitfulness begins. Yet there is always the danger of missing the hour, for abundance begins not in the world outside, but in the inner chamber, and those who cannot perceive it there may walk past it without knowing it has come. A man could enter a banquet hall blindfolded, surrounded by music and fragrance and feasting, yet remain convinced he is starving if he never removes the cloth from his eyes. So too can one walk into the day of abundance while still speaking the language of lack, still expecting emptiness, still clutching fear. That is why the chosen are warned, summoned, awakened before the day. To recognize abundance requires faith, the willingness to believe that what was barren can bloom, the courage to see provision where others see only desert, the humility to accept a gift without suspicion or complaint. Think of how often abundance is already at your side, but hidden beneath ordinary forms. The friend who offers counsel at the moment you were about to despair. That too is abundance. The door that opens just when you had resigned yourself to silence. That too is abundance. The strength to rise again after defeat. The small coin that stretches further than it should. The sudden sense of peace in the midst of chaos. All these are signs that provision has never ceased. What changes on September 27th is not that abundance appears for the first time, but that the veil of lack is torn away, and what was always present now becomes undeniable. And yet, abundance is not only for you alone. When you walk into this day of ending lack, the gift is multiplied by how it flows through you into the lives of others. For what joy is there in abundance if it is hoarded? What sweetness is there in plenty if one forgets the hungry outside the gate? True abundance has never been measured by how much one possesses, but by how much one can give. The river does not flourish by keeping its waters, it flourishes by flowing. The tree does not prove its vitality by hoarding sap, but by bearing fruit. In the same way, your appointed day of abundance is meant to spill over, to reach others, to transform your surroundings. The end of lack in your life becomes the beginning of provision in the lives of many who encounter you. Therefore, when you are told that September 27th marks the end of lack, hear it not as an invitation to idle comfort, but as a summons to awakened purpose. The chosen are never chosen for themselves alone. They are chosen to reflect a greater light, to become channels of a greater provision, to stand as reminders in a world still groaning under scarcity that another reality is possible. When your lack ends, your mission begins. For abundance is not the final destination, but the starting point of a life poured out in service and joy. Lack was never your destiny, it was preparation for the abundance now appointed to you. Many people wander through the deserts of their lives and assume that the barrenness they feel is the final shape of their story. They confuse the wilderness for the destination, the silence for abandonment, and the ache of emptiness for the decree of fate. Yet the truth is far different. What appears as lack is not the handwriting of destiny, but the chiseling work of preparation. A sculptor never begins with a polished figure. He begins with a block of marble, plain and unremarkable, and he strikes it again and again, removing what is unnecessary, shaping what is hidden. To the untrained eye, those blows may look destructive, but in reality they are creating the form of something magnificent. In the same way, the seasons of lack in your life have not been meant to destroy you but to carve you, to hollow out a space within that abundance alone can fill. The soul is not ready to carry abundance without first knowing the H of emptiness. A vessel that has never been emptied does not understand fullness. It takes the contrast to reveal the beauty of the gift. Imagine drinking deeply from a spring after days of thirst. The water is not merely water, it is life itself. Every drop is precious, Every taste is a reminder of survival. But if you had never known thirst, the spring would have been ordinary, even unremarkable. In this way, lack has given you eyes to see abundance for what it truly is. It has sharpened your hunger so that when provision comes, you will not dismiss it, squander it, or overlook it. You will see it with wonder. Preparation in the form of lack also strengthens the soul's foundations. A house built on soft ground will not stand when the rains come, no matter how grand its design. So it is with abundance. If it arrives in a soul untested, it becomes a snare instead of a blessing. Wealth without wisdom corrupts. Power without humility destroys. Influence without compassion isolates. But when abundance meets a heart that has walked through the wilderness, it finds soil ready to anchor it. Such a heart does not take abundance as entitlement, but as stewardship, not as evidence of superiority, but as evidence of grace. The trials of lack have planted within you the humility and strength needed to carry what is now appointed. Think of the story of Israel in the desert. They were promised a land flowing with milk and honey, but they did not step into it immediately after leaving Egypt. They walked 40 years through wastelands, learning dependence, stripping away the illusions of self-sufficiency, discovering that manna comes from heaven, that water can spring from a rock. That survival is not by bread alone, but by every word from the one who leads them. The desert was never their destiny. It was their preparation, and when at last they stood at the border of the promised land, they entered not as slaves clutching scraps, but as a people ready to receive inheritance. Your lack has served the same purpose. It has trained you for the weight of abundance, so that when it arrives, you will not mistake it for a fragile dream, but recognize it as your appointed reality. There is a temptation when walking through lack to confuse identity with circumstance. Many believe that because they are empty, they themselves are emptiness. Because they are lacking, they themselves are lack. This is the greatest lie of all. Circumstances shift like shadows, but identity is rooted in something eternal. You were never destined for poverty of soul, poverty of purpose, or poverty of provision. The season of lack has whispered otherwise, convincing you that the silence meant abandonment, that the delay meant denial, that the waiting meant rejection. But the truth is clearer now. You were being prepared for a table already set, a feast already waiting, a river already flowing toward you. Even nature itself testifies to this rhythm. The tree in winter looks barren, its branches stripped, its leaves fallen, its fruit absent. To the unknowing, it seems dead, abandoned by the season, forgotten by the earth. But within its roots, deep in hidden places, nourishment is being stored, foundations are being strengthened, life is being preserved. Winter is not its destiny. Spring is written into its design, and when the appointed time comes, buds appear, blossoms break open, and fruit returns in greater measure. Your lack has been such a winter. You may have looked lifeless, forgotten, or empty, but beneath the surface, life was being prepared, strength was being stored, and now, like the tree at the appointed season, abundance is ready to bloom. It is also true that lack reveals desire in its purest form. When everything is at hand, desires blur together and one forgets what truly matters. But when something is withheld, when hunger gnaws, when emptiness lingers, the soul learns what it longs for most. You have discovered in your lack the weight of your true desires. You have learned which hungers are shallow and which are deep, which thirsts are fleeting and which are eternal. And this clarity ensures that when abundance arrives, you will not waste it chasing what never satisfied. Instead, you will receive with gratitude what your soul always truly longed for. Preparation through lack also draws you closer to others who walk in the same path. The one who has never known emptiness cannot understand the cries of the hungry. but the one who has walked through the valley of want carries within them a compassion that cannot be manufactured. This compassion is itself part of your preparation, for abundance that ends with you is no abundance at all. Real abundance is meant to overflow, to reach others, to lift those who are still in the wilderness you have left behind. And so, lack has not only prepared you to receive, it has prepared you to share. Every story of transformation is marked by this pattern. The soil must first be broken before the seed can grow. The night must stretch long before dawn can be recognized. The cocoon must press tight before the butterfly emerges. So too your lack has been the ground, the night, the cocoon. It has felt like an end, but it has always been a beginning, and the abundance appointed to you has been waiting, not impatiently, but purposefully until you were ready to hold it. When you look back, you will see that your lack was never wasted. Every tear, every unanswered prayer, every closed door, every long silence has been part of the shaping. They have trained your vision, deepened your hunger, softened your pride, expanded your compassion, and rooted your faith. You have been prepared not for scraps, but for a feast, not for scarcity, but for overflow, not for survival, but for abundance appointed in its time. September 27th is not a date of chance, but a divine marker of transition from scarcity to provision. Many regard days on a calendar as mere numbers, indifferent squares that pass from one to the next without meaning. Yet history itself teaches us that certain days stand apart, not because they are different in the turning of the sun, but because they are appointed to carry weight. These are the days when hidden plans are unveiled, when what has been prepared in silence comes suddenly into sight, when time bends toward intention. The soul can sense such moments even if it cannot explain them. It is as if eternity leans close, and the ordinary frame of hours becomes a doorway into something vast and decisive. To see a day as appointed is to understand that your life is not ruled by accident. If one believes everything is a result of chance, then lack is random, abundance is random, and meaning evaporates. But if one sees that there is a rhythm, a hand guiding, a purpose shaping, then days themselves become signals. Just as the farmer knows the season to sow and the season to reap, so too does the soul come to recognize that every life carries appointed times when the desert must give way to fruitfulness. September 27th is spoken of as such a marker. It is not merely another day, but the turning of a chapter, the signal that what has long been withheld will now be released. Scarcity has a voice. It whispers over and over again that tomorrow will look like today, that nothing ever changes, that lack is permanent. This is the song of despair, monotonous and unyielding. It convinces the weary heart that hope is foolish, that expectation only leads to disappointment, that waiting is wasted effort. Yet even in this endless chant, there comes a day when the voice of scarcity is interrupted, a day that says, no longer, a day that insists the old refrain ends here. September 27th stands as such a contradiction, a divine announcement that the cycle of scarcity is broken and a new sound begins, the song of provision. Think of the shift between night and morning. Darkness does not last forever, though in its depth it feels eternal. Those who sit awake in the midnight hours may grow convinced the sun has forgotten them. Yet always, without fail, the horizon begins to glow, the first colors of dawn break through, and the light returns. Morning is not an accident. It is written into the order of the universe. In the same way, provision is not a lucky accident that sometimes stumbles into a human life. It is written into the fabric of being chosen. September 27th is like that horizon, the guarantee that night cannot hold forever, that lack cannot rule endlessly, that the day of provision must come because it has been set. There is power in recognizing appointed times. The one who believes every day is the same misses the chance to awaken when the hour of change arrives. Imagine a traveler waiting at a station, told that a train will come at a precise moment. If he shrugs and assumes trains appear by random chance, he may wander away, distracted, absent when the train arrives. But if he believes the time is appointed, he waits in expectation, ready to step forward when the sound of wheels meets the tracks. So it is with the soul. Belief in appointed days stirs expectation. Expectation awakens readiness. Readiness ensures that when provision appears, one is prepared to receive it. Scarcity, too, has been part of the preparation. But it was never meant to reign. It served a purpose, like scaffolding around a structure that is being built. No builder leaves scaffolding standing once the house is complete. It is removed, revealing what was hidden behind it all along. September 27th represents that moment when the scaffolding is taken down, when lack steps aside, and the structure of provision is revealed in its full design. You were never meant to dwell forever in unfinished places. The appointed day is the removal of temporary coverings, the unveiling of what has been quietly completed in you. When we speak of provision, it is not only the material forms that people often imagine. True provision is deeper, wider, richer. It includes the strength to stand when storms come, the wisdom to make choices that align with calling, the courage to face uncertainty with trust, the relationships that breathe life into weary hearts. It includes the unseen graces that hold you when visible supports crumble. Scarcity has attempted to blind you to these things, reducing your vision to what you lack. But the appointed day expands your sight, allowing you to recognize that provision has been waiting in many forms, and now it is released in abundance. To call a date appointed is also to call attention to the one who appoints it, for nothing sets itself apart without reason. Just as stars are set in their places and seasons follow their order, so too are the days of a life marked by intention. To live with this awareness is to live in conversation with meaning. It is to believe that your story is not a collection of accidents strung together, but a tapestry woven with both light and shadow. The shadow of scarcity has played its role, but now the thread of provision is drawn through, brightening the pattern and altering the whole design. Notice, too, that transition is not only about outward change, but inward readiness. A field may be fertile, but if the farmer does not plant, no harvest will come. A feast may be laid out, but if the guest does not enter, hunger will remain. September 27th is a marker not only that provision begins, but that your heart must rise to meet it. Expectation must replace resignation, gratitude must replace complaint, openness must replace fear. The appointed day is not magic, it is invitation. It calls you to step forward into what has been waiting, to receive what is being poured out, to believe that scarcity no longer defines you. Think of the countless times in sacred history when specific days were named as turning points. A single night when a people walked out of slavery, a single morning when stone was rolled away and hope revived, a single hour when the Spirit descended and a community was born. These were not accidents. They were markers, intentional intersections where eternity broke into time. Your own life, too, carries such markers, days when everything shifts, when the desert behind you and the river ahead of you are divided by a single moment. September 27th is described as one such crossing, a day written not by chance but by design, when what has been dry becomes watered, when what has been empty becomes filled, when what has been waiting is at last revealed. Scarcity was a teacher, but it cannot be a master. Provision was always the inheritance, but it could not be rushed. Appointed days guard the rhythm of your life, ensuring that you are not crushed by what arrives too soon, nor starved by what never arrives at all. And so this marker stands, not as a random flicker in time, but as a door that swings open at precisely the right hour, inviting you to step out of scarcity and into provision, to leave behind the season that has shaped you and to enter the season that now awaits you. Abundance begins within, in the renewal of vision and recognition of your chosen identity. Many people long for abundance as though it were a treasure hidden in distant lands, waiting to be discovered through luck or relentless pursuit. They imagine it as something external, something that must arrive from beyond them, falling into their hands from unseen skies. But abundance does not begin there. It begins quietly, secretly, within the mind and soul. It begins with the awakening of vision, the ability to see differently, to perceive not only the world outside, but the truth about who you are. Without this inner renewal, even the richest of gifts will be wasted, for a heart that does not know itself, chosen, will forever interpret provision as temporary, fragile or undeserved. The greatest barrier to abundance is not the absence of resources but the blindness of the soul. A person surrounded by opportunities, relationships, or blessings may remain imprisoned by the mindset of lack, unable to see what is before them. It is like standing in a garden, yet believing oneself to be in a desert. Vision defines reality more powerfully than circumstance. When the eyes of the soul are clouded by fear, bitterness, or doubt, abundance will pass unnoticed, or worse, it will be grasped in desperation and squandered. But when vision is renewed, the same landscape looks entirely different. What once appeared barren reveals hidden streams. What once seemed lifeless begins to show signs of growth. Renewal of vision is the soil in which abundance takes root. Consider the way a child sees the world. For them, wonder is everywhere, even in the smallest things. A stone can be a treasure, a shadow can be a companion, a doorway can be a portal to mystery. They are not blind to possibility because their vision has not yet been dulled by disappointment or hardened by cynicism. They carry within them the instinct of abundance, the unshaken belief that life holds more than what can be grasped at first glance. As years pass, that vision often dims. Lack presses in, failures accumulate, and gradually the eyes of the soul close. But renewal is always possible. It is possible to see with childlike wonder again, to recover the clarity that abundance is not an illusion, but a deeper truth waiting to be recognized. Recognition of your chosen identity is inseparable from this renewal. Abundance does not flourish in those who believe themselves forgotten or unworthy. To see oneself as cast aside is to live in constant suspicion of every gift, to hold it loosely as though it will soon be taken away. But to know oneself as chosen is to receive with confidence, not arrogance, but gratitude. Being chosen does not mean superiority over others. It means responsibility, purpose, and belonging. It means that your life carries intention, that you are not an accident wandering through meaningless days. This recognition shifts how you interpret every moment. Lack is no longer interpreted as punishment, but as preparation. Provision is no longer seen as fragile luck, but as the natural outflow of being appointed for a purpose. Abundance cannot be contained in material possessions alone. If it could, then the wealthiest of people would always be the most content. Yet history is filled with stories of those who gained riches but remained impoverished within. Abundance begins in the mind, in the capacity to see meaning in life, to interpret challenges as opportunities, to recognize beauty where others see only routine. It begins in the heart, in the ability to love and be loved, to forgive rather than remain shackled by resentment, to rejoice in what is given rather than lament what is withheld. Without this inner abundance, external wealth only magnifies emptiness. But with this inner abundance, even the smallest gifts become treasures, and every circumstance carries hidden provision. Renewal of vision means learning to interpret differently. A closed door may no longer be seen as rejection, but as redirection. A season of waiting may no longer be seen as waste, but as gestation, a time when unseen roots are growing deep. A painful loss may no longer be seen as mere tragedy, but as a hollowing that makes space for unexpected fullness. The shift is not in the external event, but in the internal sight. To the eyes renewed, abundance is not delayed until everything aligns perfectly. Abundance begins now, in the recognition that each moment carries the seed of provision if it is perceived rightly. Think of a mirror tarnished and clouded. It may still reflect, but poorly distorting what is placed before it. The soul, when covered by lies of lack and unworthiness, reflects life in the same distorted way. Renewal is the polishing of that mirror, the restoration of clarity so that what is true can be seen without warping. And what is true is this: you are chosen, and chosen ones are not destined for perpetual lack. The moment you recognize this, abundance begins, not because everything outside has changed, but because your perception has been aligned with reality. To embrace chosen identity is also to embrace responsibility, for abundance is not given for selfish hoarding, but for the unfolding of purpose. When you know yourself chosen, you begin to see abundance as a trust placed in your hands. Your gifts, your opportunities, your resources become instruments not just for personal comfort, but for impact, for generosity, for the enrichment of others. This shifts the very meaning of abundance. It is no longer measured by accumulation, but by overflow. It is no longer a question of how much you can keep, but how much you can release. Such recognition is impossible without an inner awakening to your identity. Scarcity often ingrains in people the habit of fear, fear of losing, fear of lacking, fear of being forgotten. Even when provision comes, the heart shaped by fear clings tightly, unable to rest. But when identity as chosen is embraced, fear loses its grip. The soul can open its hands, knowing that what has been given is part of a greater rhythm. That more will come. That one is sustained not by chance, but by design. This confidence does not erase challenges, but it transforms the way you meet them. Instead of living from desperation, you live from assurance. Instead of reacting to lack with panic, you respond with trust. This is the essence of abundance beginning within. Abundance is not a sudden shower of external blessings. It is first a fountain that springs up inside, shifting thought, shifting perception, shifting identity. It is the knowledge that you are chosen, the restoration of sight that sees possibility, beauty, and provision where others see only emptiness. From this inner beginning, all outward abundance flows. Without it, nothing satisfies. With it, everything becomes rich. And it is in this inner renewal that the true transition takes place, the movement from scarcity not just in circumstance, but in spirit, into the fullness of a life that knows itself chosen and sees abundance everywhere it turns. The wilderness was a teacher, shaping you to carry and steward abundance with gratitude. When people imagine the wilderness, they often think of desolation, emptiness, and endless struggle beneath a scorching sun or beneath a canopy of darkness where no clear path is visible. It is the picture of barrenness, a place where resources are scarce, direction is uncertain, and survival feels like the only goal. And yet, it is in the wilderness that the soul is most deeply formed. What feels like abandonment is often the classroom of preparation. What appears as punishment is often the training ground for strength. The wilderness is not an accident, it is an appointment. It is where lack teaches the lessons that abundance could never teach. In the wilderness, you learn dependence. When the familiar supports are stripped away, when the usual sources of comfort and supply vanish, you are left face to face with the reality of your own limits. You discover how fragile human strength can be, how quickly it runs dry, how small it looks against the vastness of trial. And yet, it is in that exposure that you begin to see the deeper truth. Survival comes not from what you control, but from what is provided beyond you. Manna in the desert, water from a rock, shade in the heat. These become not just stories, but lived realities in the wilderness. Dependence is not weakness. It is the recognition that your life is sustained by more than what you can grasp or build. Such dependence, learned in lack, becomes the foundation for gratitude in abundance. The wilderness also teaches humility. In times of plenty, pride easily grows. When barns are full and tables are set, the heart can deceive itself into thinking it is self-sufficient, that its own strength or cleverness secured the blessing. But in the wilderness, when each step feels uncertain, when hunger gnaws and thirst burns, there is no illusion of self-sufficiency. You are brought low, reminded of your humanity, reminded that you are not the source of life, but the receiver of it. This humility, pressed into the soul by the wilderness, becomes the safeguard against arrogance when abundance comes. For the one who has walked the desert does not boast when the river flows. They remember the parched ground, and gratitude replaces pride. Patience is another lesson of the wilderness. Lack stretches time. Each day feels longer, each delay heavier, each unanswered prayer more unbearable. In this stretching, the soul learns to wait. It learns to endure without seeing, to trust without proof, to continue walking even when the horizon remains unchanged. Patience forged in this fire becomes invaluable when abundance arrives. Without it, abundance can make one restless, always chasing more, never content. But patience teaches contentment. It trains the heart to savor what is given rather than to grasp greedily for what is not yet in hand. It slows the pace, so that abundance can be received fully, without rushing past the joy of the present moment. The wilderness also reveals what is false. Stripped of distractions, stripped of excess, the soul is confronted with itself. Motives are exposed, desires are tested, illusions crumble. What you thought you needed may be revealed as unnecessary. What you thought you wanted may be exposed as hollow. The wilderness is a refiner's fire, burning away the dross so that only what is true remains. This clarity is essential for carrying abundance. Without it, abundance only feeds illusions, strengthening false desires that never satisfy. But when the wilderness has done its work, abundance becomes not a tool for vanity, but a vessel for what is real and lasting. Gratitude itself is born in the wilderness. To receive little and yet survive, to endure long stretches of scarcity and yet find small provisions along the way, awakens a gratitude that abundance alone could not teach. In abundance alone, the extraordinary can quickly feel ordinary. Daily bread can be taken for granted, moments of beauty overlooked. But in the wilderness, every drop of water is precious, every crumb of food a miracle, every cool breeze a gift. That perspective never truly leaves. When abundance comes, the heart shaped by wilderness gratitude does not overlook blessings. No matter how small, it sees treasure in the ordinary, and abundance becomes an experience of continual wonder. Think of the wanderers of old who moved through deserts before they reached their inheritance. They were given just enough for each day, never excess, never surplus to hoard. At first they complained, wishing for more, forgetting what they had already been delivered from. Yet with time, the pattern taught them that provision is not about stockpiles, but about faithfulness. They were being taught that abundance is not measured by excess, but by the assurance that tomorrow will be cared for just as today was. This daily dependence is the heartbeat of stewardship, and stewardship is the mark of one who has truly been shaped by wilderness training. Stewardship is not merely management of resources, it is the attitude with which you hold them. A steward understands that what is given is not theirs to waste but theirs to tend. They hold abundance with open hands, aware it is entrusted, not possessed. The wilderness prepares you for this posture. For those who never knew lack, abundance easily becomes a trap of greed, pride, or careless indulgence. But for those who have been trained in the wilderness, abundance is never taken lightly. It is handled with reverence, with gratitude, with awareness of its purpose. This is why the wilderness is essential. Without it, abundance becomes a burden. With it, abundance becomes a gift to be carried wisely. The wilderness is not endless, though it may feel unending when you are in it. Every wilderness has a boundary, every desert a border, every valley a rising hill. But its lessons remain even after you have crossed. The gratitude, humility, patience, and stewardship it plants in you are not left behind with the dry sands. They are carried forward, shaping how you walk in the land of provision. And this shaping is what ensures that abundance does not destroy you, but blesses you. Even in the wilderness, traces of abundance can often be found. A shade tree in the heat, a hidden spring in the rocks, a bird in the barren sky, all small reminders that you are not forsaken. These glimpses are like promises, telling you that abundance is real and that it will come in fullness. They sustain you, they whisper hope, they point you forward. And when at last the fullness of abundance arrives, you remember those small signs with gratitude, understanding they were not accidents but reminders that you were being guided through the trial toward the inheritance. The wilderness was never meant to be wasted. Every step through dry places has etched strength into you. Every season of hunger has sharpened appreciation. Every stretch of waiting has cultivated resilience. These are not meaningless scars. They are the marks of preparation. You have been taught to see, to depend, to hope, to endure, to give thanks. And it is with this training that you now stand ready to receive abundance, not as one who stumbles into it blindly, but as one prepared to steward it with gratitude and to carry it with reverence. Abundance is not merely material wealth, but a state of alignment with divine provision, where purpose and blessing converge. When most people hear the word abundance, their minds immediately turn toward possessions, riches, and material gain. They imagine overflowing storehouses, golden opportunities, and treasures that can be touched, counted, or measured. Yet, to confine abundance to wealth is to diminish its true depth. Abundance is not the shallow accumulation of things. It is the unveiling of a life lived in harmony with the order of heaven. It is not simply having more, but becoming more, becoming aligned, becoming attuned, becoming awakened to the rhythm of provision that flows from a source far beyond what human striving can secure. The soul that misunderstands abundance will always chase shadows. It will run tirelessly after possessions, thinking they hold the key to peace, while peace remains distant. It will measure its worth by comparison, thinking abundance is about having more than another, when true abundance cannot be weighed on scales of competition. The essence of abundance is found in the alignment of heart, will, and calling with the purposes of the divine. When one is aligned, even little feels like much, and when one is misaligned, even much feels like nothing. That is why abundance is not first about what fills your hands, but what fills your spirit. Abundance is the awareness that life itself is a gift, that every breath is borrowed air, that every sunrise is a declaration of mercy, that every step forward is proof of sustaining grace. The one who lives in abundance does not wait until barns are filled to rejoice, for they recognize that the mere ability to sow seed is already a blessing. They see not only the harvest in the field, but the miracle in the soil, the promise hidden in the unseen. Abundance is vision. Eyes trained to see provision in places others overlook. Eyes that notice gifts disguised as ordinary moments. Eyes that discern purpose in seasons that appear barren. True abundance reveals itself not in the grasping of wealth, but in the generosity it inspires. When the soul is aligned with divine provision, It does not cling tightly to what it receives, fearing it may run out, for it has already learned that supply does not originate in human hands. It flows from an unending source. Therefore, abundance is not measured by how much one hoards, but by how freely one can give. A life of abundance spills over, touching others, lifting burdens, meeting needs, offering hope. Wealth can accumulate in a vault, locked away from sight, but abundance cannot be contained. It moves outward like rivers from a spring, nourishing every place it touches. Purpose and abundance are inseparably linked. To live without purpose is to remain restless, no matter how much is gained. To live in purpose, even in simplicity, is to experience abundance. This is why some with little in possessions walk with joy that cannot be shaken, while others with overflowing accounts carry emptiness that nothing can satisfy. Abundance is not about the size of your resources, but the alignment of your resources with your calling. When you walk in the path ordained for you, every resource you need comes in season, not always early, not always in excess, but always sufficient, always timely, always perfect for what has been entrusted to you to accomplish. Abundance is harmony between the external and the internal, between what you carry in your heart and what you receive in your hand. When the two are disconnected, there is frustration. Hands may be full, but hearts are empty, or hearts may long for purpose, but hands appear empty, waiting for resources to match the vision. But when the divine breathes alignment, when the heart's calling and the hand's provision converge, that is when abundance truly begins. In that alignment, work is no longer toil but worship, giving is no longer loss but joy, and receiving is no longer greed but gratitude. Consider the one who tends a garden. If they measure abundance only by the fruit at the end of the season, they miss the abundance already present in the seed. They miss it in the rain that falls unbidden, in the sun that warms the soil, in the unseen roots that stretch downward in quiet strength. Abundance is not confined to the visible harvest, but is woven throughout the entire process. Life, too, is such a garden. To see abundance only in outcomes is to live blind to the richness of the journey. True abundance teaches the heart to see fullness at every stage, to rejoice not only in harvest but in planting, in growing, in waiting, in watching. Abundance is not meant to be uniform. It does not look the same in every life. For one, abundance may be a family filled with love; for another, wisdom that guides many; for another, influence that shapes generations; for another, peace that withstands storms. To compare abundance from life to life is to misunderstand it entirely. Each vessel receives the measure designed for its purpose, and the abundance that flows through one may look different than that which flows through another. Yet all abundance originates from the same source, the same unending well, and all of it fulfills the divine design for which it was given. This is why abundance cannot be divorced from responsibility. To receive is to be entrusted, and to be entrusted is to be accountable. Abundance carries weight. It calls the heart to steward wisely, to discern carefully, to give freely, to live gratefully. It is not meant to inflate the self, but to magnify the source from which it came. The wilderness prepares the soul for this weight by teaching humility and dependence, but abundance demands that those lessons never be forgotten. Without that humility, abundance becomes dangerous. With it, abundance becomes fruitful. The alignment of abundance is also alignment with timing. Not all abundance is meant to arrive at once, nor is it always meant to remain. Seasons of outpouring come, and seasons of pruning follow, but both are parts of abundance. The pruning that removes excess is not lack but refinement. The waiting between seasons of visible harvest is not emptiness, but preparation for what is next. To see abundance clearly is to understand that it flows through seasons, and every season has its richness if the eyes are trained to see it. Abundance is not simply survival beyond lack, but thriving within divine rhythm. It is the shift from striving to resting, from fear to trust, from hoarding to giving. It is not about arriving at a place of excess, but awakening to the reality that the source of provision has always been with you. To live in abundance is to live anchored, knowing that your life is held, your path is guided, your needs are known. It is to move through each day not with clenched fists, but with open hands, ready to receive, ready to release, ready to walk in harmony with what has been purposed for you.